I'm an emergency manager. I specialize in disaster response. I have over 10 years experience working on the front lines of disasters across the United States. This is not a political page, and this is an educational series about emergency management and disaster response. The current president of the United States has warned that he is preparing to reshape the Federal Emergency Management Agency, which is FEMA, which has been on the front lines of responding to recent wildfires in California and last year's hurricane in North Carolina. Two hurricanes that I worked in the fall, Hurricane Helene and Hurricane Milton, alongside the FEMA team. In his quote below, you can see that he is criticizing FEMA for being slow. As a person who works these disasters, I cannot stress how dangerous this is for the hurricane states specifically. Dismantling FEMA will slow the process down even further, and the states that receive the most aid from FEMA are the hurricane-afflicted Southeast states. If you have never been affected by a disaster, received FEMA aid, or worked these disasters, you are not welcome in my comments to give criticism to FEMA. I personally am not a pro or against FEMA, but I am pro helping people. And I witnessed firsthand how often and how much help FEMA gives to people affected by disasters and disaster survivors. The recovery process of any disaster is a very long process. FEMA responds and has responded to every disaster that they have been called upon. And the process in which FEMA is called is a state makes a declaration of emergency and says, essentially, we need help. We need more help. We need more resources. FEMA does not take over disaster response. They are a support agency. The state that is affected is responsible for running the recovery and the response to the disaster. So, for example, North Carolina's government is in charge. FEMA is assisting. They come in, they back up with resources and personnel and money. Same in California. California is in charge of that disaster right now, the fires. FEMA comes in and assists. They were never in charge entirely. They do not come in and push the state government out of the way and make all of the decisions. They don't have jurisdiction to do so. Let's look at the history of FEMA. Before FEMA existed, in some cases, more than 100 separate agencies might be jockeying for control and jurisdiction of a disaster. How efficient do you think that is? How quickly do you think people were actually getting help? Things got so messy, President Jimmy Carter signed an executive order to create FEMA. In 1979, one house managed it all. They absorbed multiple government programs. While it is controversial, it was the best answer at the time and still is. To give it back to states means states can't afford disasters, means people won't get help.